Princess Marith wanted Captain Jonas Reed, polished for court because the human looked like war had spit him into her diplomatic procession. Marith had spent weeks preparing the Unity Banquet, where her mother would judge Earth. She needed elegance, posture, obedience, and no checking exits, so she ordered Jonas to tailors. Tutors and jewel keepers, Jonas listened, looked at the court code offered to him, and asked where they expected him to hide a knife. The princess mistook readiness for rudeness by evening. Mareth was inspecting floral shields in the western hall when her young cousin Prince Kalen vanished. 1 minute chasing light moths, the next missing from a palace locked by blood codes. Jonas arrived half-dressed. He asked 3 questions. Where was the child last seen who changed the guard rotation? And why did the musicians stop playing in the North Gallery? Marith snapped that he was supposed to be prepared for court. Jonas picked up a toy, smelled the dust on it, and said, "I am." Then the palace remembered it had shadows. The kidnappers were not rebels with banners. They were inheritance priests. Fanatics who believed Kellen's death during the banquet would shame Reeth's line and force her mother to return to purity law. They had moved through servant ducts no noble knew existed, because nobles believed food appeared by loyalty and floors cleaned themselves. Jonas knew better. Every fort on Earth had 2 maps. The one commanders framed, and the one tired workers used when everything expensive failed. He followed kitchen heat, draft patterns, scuff marks, and frightened insects. Marith followed in ceremonial slippers that betrayed her with every click. When she demanded guards, Jonas said, "Loud help arrives late." That was the first time she obeyed without liking it. They entered the laundry tunnels below the hall, where perfume turned into steam. Jonas moved like a hunting animal trained by grief, touching pipes, listening to water pressure, reading dust. Marith saw blood on his knuckles from forcing a locked grate, but he did not slow. They found the first guard alive, drugged inside a linen cart, then the second, dead by a service altar. Jonas closed the man's eyes with 2 fingers and whispered a name from his badge. Marith had seen generals step over bodies, yet this unpolished human gave a stranger dignity while hunting murderers. Some manors are older than courts. The trail led to the old aqueduct beneath the palace, where Kellen's muffled cries echoed with dripping water and the priests prepared a public execution. Feed through stolen banquet projectors. They wanted every envoy to watch royal blood spill during the peace toast. Jonas counted 4 voices, 2 blades, a shock pistol. 1 child trying not to sob. Marith reached for the jeweled dagger at her thigh, but Jonas caught her wrist. Not yet. He loosened a steam valve, snapped a copper line, and used his own polished court sash to bind a pressure burst that screamed through the tunnel. When the priests turned, he moved. The court wanted him graceful. The dark got something better. Jonas hit the first priest with the broken valve handle, drove the second into the water, took the shock pistol blast across his ribs, and kept going as if pain had filed a complaint he would read later. Marith cut Kalen free while Jonas stood between them and the last fanatic, blade pressed to Jonas's side. The priest hissed that humans were temporary animals dressed in stolen uniforms. Jonas spat blood on the polished stones and said, "Temporary things bite hardest." He broke the man's wrist, caught the falling blade, and kicked the broadcast crystal into the aqueduct, where the planned humiliation drowned in black water. Then the banquet doors opened. Marith entered late, soaked to the knees, carrying Kalen, while Jonas followed, looking worse than before the tailors had begun. Court coat torn, lips split, blood dark across the embroidery meant to make him acceptable. The hall fell silent, envoys staring, nobles horrified. Queen, rising from her throne with both hands on the table. A protocol master whispered that the human could not be presented in such condition. Marith turned so sharply that her wet slippers slid, and her voice sounded less like silver and more like steel. "He is the only reason there is still a prince to present." The blood on his coat became the loudest jewel in the room. Kalen, still shaking, refused to leave Jonas's side. The little prince clutched the human's damaged sleeve and told the queen that the shiny men had smelled wrong. That cousin Marith had been brave, and that Captain Reed had made the monsters fall down. The nobles tried applause, but it came weakly, because they had measured cuffs, while assassins measured corridors. The queen descended, took in Jonas's wounds, then the torn court coat, then the missing ceremonial sash. He bowed badly because his ribs would not permit a proper one. Mareth almost laughed and almost cried. That was when the queen changed the ceremony instead of the unity banquet. She called for an emergency court of service. The inheritance priests were dragged from the aqueduct. Servant maps were copied, guard rotations rewritten, and noble children escorted by people who knew doors. Jonas was ordered to the royal physician, but Kalen refused to release him until Mareth promised that the human would not be punished for ruining his clothes. Jonas said the clothes had shown unexpected courage under pressure. The prince giggled. The queen smiled once, and the room breathed again the next morning. Mareth visited with the repaired court coat. The embroidery had not been cleaned, only sealed. The dark blood preserved beneath a layer of crystal thread. Jonas frowned at it. She said the court wished to display the garment in the Alliance Hall. Labeled as the first Terran formal uniform approved by royal witness, Jonas asked if it still needed gem cuffs. Mareth said, "No, Captain. It needs hidden knives." Then she placed beside it servant tunnel maps on waterproof cloth. He looked at her properly then, seeing a princess less polished and far more useful. At the next banquet, Jonas checked every exit. Mareth checked them with him, and when nobles whispered that the human looked unfinished, Prince Kalen shouted across the hall that finished people did not save anyone. The queen raised her cup, Mareth raised hers, and Jonas, bloodless now but never harmless, accepted the toast with a crooked smile. The court had wanted him polished enough to be seen. He had returned bloodied enough to be trusted.